Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Drita, and if this is your first time here, then I highly recommend subscribing and clicking that bell icon for all of your physical, mental, and spiritual needs. If you're here today, odds are you have heard about Ashtanga Yoga, Vinyasa Yoga, Iyengar Yoga, Hatha Yoga, all these different types of yoga, but you have no freaking clue which type of yoga is best for you. Whether you came to yoga for the physical benefits, the spiritual benefits, or you want to just calm your mind, this video will show you exactly what type of yoga is best suited for you. But in order to make that decision, it really is important for you to know the history of yoga and understand where this practice is even coming from to make an intelligent and safe decision, really. Now, it's fairly commonly known within the yoga world that roughly 3,000 years ago, an enlightened being and sage named Patanjali created what is called the Patanjali Yoga Sutras. Because there's no other scriptural references around, Patanjali was given the nickname the father of yoga. His system consisted of 8 limbs, and that's in Sanskrit it was called the Ashtanga yoga system. And this was a science for us to unite our individual soul, our individual consciousness with that of the cosmic intelligence known in Sanskrit as Sadashiva. Patanjali gave a unique system that comprised of various different methods in order for us to unite with Sadashiva. This comprised of various physical postures such as the asanas. It incorporated how to live, which is known as yama and niyama, breathing techniques, which is referred as pranayama, meditation, and a number of other methods and techniques. When we practiced all of these methods and techniques together, this was the practice of yoga, the purpose of which was to establish ourselves as the divine, as Sadashiva, understanding and self-realizing that we are the divine as well. However, the modern form of yoga today is very much specifically focused on the physical components of yoga, the asanas, and has completely detached from the original spiritual context for which it was created. Thus, since the discovery of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, yoga has developed and evolved into what it has come into today. So with that being said, let's break down and understand what has it really evolved to today. The most widely known forms of yoga today are known as Ashtanga Yoga, Vinyasa Yoga, and Hatha Yoga. Each one is a different style or sequences of asanas. Ashtanga Yoga, it consists of 6 different sequences that range from primary, intermediate, and 4 advanced series. And they all have order of poses and a specific flow and breathing to them. Vinyasa and Hatha Yoga don't have strict yoga sequences like Ashtanga does. And this allows a certified teacher to choose and create a different flow and sequence of asanas to whatever they're choosing. The difference between these two is that Vinyasa normally contains fast-paced poses, which kind of speeds things up and gets your heart rate going. Whereas in Hatha Yoga, the teacher chooses to slow down the sequence generally and have a more slower flow between each pose, holding each asana for a few breaths. Even slower forms of yoga are known as restorative, or there's also yin yoga, which actually you hold a pose anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes. All of the previous forms of yoga that I mentioned already specifically are movement centralized, meaning they're all incorporating just the asanas. However, there is one form of yoga that is known as Kundalini Yoga, which is incorporating a lot of different other techniques such as pranayama, mantras, which is chanting, meditation, different breathing techniques. And so a Kundalini Yoga class is going to look a lot different from a Hatha Yoga, Vinyasa Yoga, etc. Now, there's a lot of other different forms of yoga available as well. These are, branded forms of yoga around people's names that they kind of developed on their own. I'll give a brief overview of some of these. And the first one that we'll cover is what's called Iyengar Yoga. Iyengar Yoga was developed in the 70s by BKS Iyengar. It can be argued that he's a yoga master. This is a form of Ashtanga Yoga, and you can argue that it's one of the most authentic forms of yoga that are available out there. Bikram Yoga is another form of Hatha Yoga that was developed in the 70s as well by a lifelong yogi named Bikram Chaudhary. What he did was created a 90-minute series comprised of 26 asanas, which was designed to be only done in a room that is 105 degrees Fahrenheit, and it was solely just these 26 asanas. So you flow from one asana to the next, to the next, to the next, and it's very strict. But like a vast majority of yoga styles out there today, there's little to no spirituality that's involved in this. And so you can't really say that Bikram was a yoga master himself. Now, another style or brand that I wanted to talk about was Kino Yoga. And Kino is an instructor. Her name is Kino McGregor, who became popular on YouTube. And her style of yoga is an Ashtanga style of yoga, but it's very much just a brand that's developed around her name. She doesn't teach very much as far as spirituality goes, but she does have a lot of classes that get into the nitty-gritty of, you know, the physical component, going through a lot of different asana sequences. I know she does a little bit of meditation stuff, but it's very much designed specifically around that physical component as well. And this brings us to Christian or holy yoga, which was founded in 2006 by Brooke Boone. She has, unfortunately, a terrible misunderstanding of what yoga really is. As on her website, she says that yoga predates Hinduism, which isn't true, and therefore it cannot be held to a specific religion. So she's trying to justify that, you know, yoga can be practiced by Christians. Unfortunately, that's completely false. And so this form of yoga does exist, but this revolution is really just a way of pulling it away from its roots and extracting yoga for what it truly is. Another revolutionary form of yoga that was recently developed is known as drunk yoga. And drunk yoga was created by a female named Eli Walker in 2016, and she refers to herself as the original drunk yogi herself. But she's certified 500 hours yoga registered teacher, and so because of that, she claims that she has really developed a way to relax the mind for individuals. Unfortunately, I don't think she understands that yoga already does relax the mind. And she also claimed that this is a way of bringing it all back to the roots. So just so you know, this is completely ridiculous, and it's not a form of yoga that anybody should be practicing. And much like drunk yoga, there is goat yoga that is now existing, and it's become recently very popular within the mainstream yoga community. I'm not 100% sure why, but in these classes, you perform yoga on a mat while goats jump on you. I'm unsure of how this can actually be called yoga in any way, so it's one of those variations and styles of yoga that should also be completely avoided, because it's not a new revolution of yoga. It's actually growing exponentially further and further away from the original science of yoga that Patanjali gave originally. But if you want to dive in to learn and know what type of yoga practice you should be embodying, you should really understand three kind of simple basic truths. And the first is that you are an individual soul. You have your own individual consciousness. And the second is that this divine consciousness, intelligence, exists outside of and inside of you. And the third is that the various practices of yoga are a system and a science for you to unite your individual soul or consciousness with that cosmic intelligence, that cosmic consciousness. And this is essentially what every enlightened master before us has come and tried to teach us in their own unique way, of course. So whether it's Jesus, Buddha, various different enlightened beings such as Paramahamsa Yogananda, or my guru, His Holiness Paramahamsa Nithyananda, all of these individuals are essentially trying to teach us how to go beyond the self, this individual person that I believe myself as. And this science, if they follow the original authentic teachings, can bring us to that state of, you know, peak health and wellness, perfect, you know, mentality, and completely dropping the stressful, worrisome thoughts that are constantly going on in our minds, and really connecting our spirit and ourself to that higher state of being that we deep down know truly is there. So it's important to note that without this context, you're really missing out on what yoga is. And so if you truly do want to know what type of yoga is best for you, then keep listening, because I'm going to tell you now. So I mentioned in the beginning that Patanjali Yoga Sutras was written roughly 3,000 years ago. However, original yogic scriptures have been discovered. The science of yoga was actually written over 60,000 years ago. This would make Patanjali not the originator of yoga, but the organizer of yoga. And if this science was written 60,000 years ago, then who was the originator of yoga, and why does it matter to you, a beginner of yoga? The science of yoga was actually initially revealed in immense detail by the Adi Guru, the first guru named Sadashiva. And the style of yoga that he revealed was known as what's called Ashtanga yoga, which is the 6 limbs of yoga, not to be confused with Patanjali's 8 limbs of yoga. In the ancient scripture, known as the Kirana Agamas, Sadashiva himself says that it is to be known that there are 6 limbs of yoga. Now listen to these various subservients of yoga practices. They are pratyahara, dhyana, pranayama, dharana, asana, and Samadhi. These 6 are what constitute the yoga practice. This means that Ashtanga yoga, one of the most popular and arguably most authentic forms of yoga on the planet, is now not seen as the most authentic yoga on the planet, because there's new scriptures that are saying that this Ashtanga yoga by Sadashiva is the most authentic practice. Now again, why does this matter to you? Because Sadashiva says this unique system of yoga exclusively belonging to Shiva is known as Shiva Sadbhava, which is centered on the essential qualities of Sadashiva and on the nature of being eternally free from the 3 limiting factors, which is karma, maya, and avara. This means that any Christian interested in practicing yoga is actually participating in a science created by Shiva of Sanatana Hindu Dharma, which cannot be pulled away from the religion and lifestyle of Hinduism. We now have scriptural evidence that is actually saying that the objective of yoga is to unite with the eternal and free essential qualities of Sadashiva, which is liberating us from the cycle of birth and death. Scriptures also show that Sadashiva said being ever relevant and superior to all other systems of yoga, this yoga, Shiva Sadbhava yoga, is always bringing you to that exalted state and establishing you in that delighted state. Therefore, the practitioner should be called a Nitya yogi, who is established in that delighted state. Now these quotes are taken from the Kirana Agama, and I'll link those down in the description section below, so if you want to check them out, they'll be there. And I know what you're probably thinking, you being a beginner, why does this even matter to you? Why am I even telling you this knowledge? Well, it's really important to understand that he, Sadashiva, the creator of yoga, just said that the superior form of yoga, the most superior form of yoga, which will be always relevant, is known as Nitya yoga. And so that should be important to you if you want to know the best form of yoga that you should be practicing. Well, the all relevant and superior form of yoga that was originally created is that form of yoga for you. And so now your options are, you can either practice the adapted forms of yoga and incorporate the goat yoga, the wine yoga, the beer yoga, and completely take you away from the purpose of yoga itself. Or the second option is you can practice Nitya yoga, which is the most authentic form of yoga designed to strengthen your body, empower your mind, and establish you in a state of eternal bliss. And this is what's referred to as Nithyananda yoga today, which is Nitya Sanskrit for eternal and Ananda meaning bliss. And so where does this bring us exactly? Well, whether you understand the spiritual context that I'm speaking about or not is actually irrelevant. For example, you don't need to understand the internet in order to use it, and the science of the internet doesn't need to be developed any further. Practicing yoga is very much the same. You don't need to master yoga to use it, nor do you need to further develop it and more so than what it already was. And so whether you're a beginner, intermediate, or advanced yogi, the easiest way to benefit and be empowered as a yogi, whether it's physically, mentally, or spiritually, is through the original form of yoga, which is Nithyananda yoga. And Nithyananda yoga is itself the science of radiating enlightenment, and it is being revived by His Holiness Paramahamsa Nithyananda, and it is basically the fast track for you to experience health, wealth, and abundance, and a deep spiritual connection to the cosmos, and ultimately giving you that deep joyful feeling and that feeling of immense bliss. And the best news is that this can be practiced every day for free. Paramahamsa Nithyananda is actually sharing the knowledge of authentic yoga freely around the world, because his mission is not to capitalize on the booming yoga industry. It's actually to model the free education system that was created and lived by in the Sanatana Hindu Dharma. And you can attend one of these free Nithyananda Yoga classes either by going to www.nithyananda.tv. You could also go to Nithyananda Yoga Facebook page, or go and check out the Nithyananda Yoga YouTube page as well. And without a doubt, I can tell you that through all my years of being both a yoga practitioner and a teacher and acharya, I can guarantee you that the best form of yoga, whether you're a beginner, intermediate, or advanced, is the original form of yoga, Nithyananda Yoga, which is absolutely incredible, and it's something that you just have to try for yourself. It's not every day that you go into a yoga class. You actually won't experience this anywhere, but if you go to one of these yoga classes, you will hear the original Sanskrit verses being chanted along with every method, technique, and asana that you're doing, which really does not only empower you throughout the practice, but it really does authenticate what you truly are doing. So I hope this video helped you out today in discovering what type of yoga style is best for you. At the very least, I hope it gives you a little bit of wisdom and knowledge on what you should be avoiding. If you're interested in learning any more information on yoga, then please click subscribe. Also click that bell icon so you don't miss any of the new video content that I release. Let me know in the comment section down below what you thought of the video, and if you have any other questions, you can also put those there. Thank you for tuning in. Truly hope you got a lot from this. And as always, guys, be blissful.